So I'm really happy that you guys came out here this evening in the cold and in the busy time of year to join us with Tracy Zager. Tracy is a math coach in Portland, Maine, and the mother of 2 daughters. She worked as a 4th grade teacher and also with pre-service teachers, and she's now an author of a really great book called Becoming the Math Teacher You Wish You Had. So,
thank you so much. Oh, thanks. Can I find out how many people who are here are parents and how many people are staff? That would be helpful. So parents, hands up. Staff, hands up. All right, so we're gonna have a mix, which is great. So I had such a good time today. I met with a group of teachers who are reading the book, and they were telling me some of the things and concerns that they hear. So I definitely have an agenda first, but I also want to leave room for questions because I expect there will be some questions. So here's what I'd like you to do. I want you to imagine math class, and I'm talking about the first math class that comes to mind, maybe the most hard-pressed one into your memory. Close your eyes for a second. Remember what it's like. I want you to look around the room. I want to know who's talking. Where is the teacher? Where are they standing or sitting? Where are you? Where are the kids? And then just take a second to either jot down what came to mind or tell a neighbor. I'm not going to ask people to share it because it might be, we're just getting to know each other. And some of the memories might not be great. Some might be, depending on your experience. But what's like your script for math class? What's it look and sound like is what I want you to just get a second to get out in the air. And I'm gonna fix this. Okay, let's come on back.
We need therapy.
You need therapy now? So when I ask this question, usually there's a mix of negative and positive memories, quite a few negative. And it doesn't matter the crowd. If I ask teachers, this comes from a study of pre-service elementary teachers. They were asked to remember math class and draw about it. And these were some of the memories that they had. If you can't read the type, it says being put down by the teacher in front of peers. Obviously crying. There's a timed fact test going on in the bottom corner with you see the timer and the empty multiplication chart with all the question marks. I don't understand. So an all around kind of negative description. And the numbers on who has negative memories of math class are pretty high. So for example, there was a study of K to 6 math teachers and they were asked, what do you remember? And only 7% of them used just positive language. So 93% had at least a mix or some very negative experiences. So that's just the reality. Teachers are the products of the same school system they're being asked to change right now. So some of them had pretty negative experiences themselves, and I work with teachers on kind of coming to terms with that and then trying to rewrite the script into something better. But parents too. A lot of parents had really negative experiences in math, and we have to think about how to parent our children and try to break our societal problem with math class where we have tended to have a kind of a negative experience. So when I ask people about what they remember about math, I hear a lot of negative words like these. And this is very upsetting to me because this is a discipline that we teach, and so we can't feel this way. Our whole country kind of has this national problem with math. So I became interested several years ago in what would happen if I looked at mathematicians and the way they describe math. Because if this is what math is like why does anyone do it, right? Like why would you go into this as a subject? It doesn't make any sense. It sounds awful. So I started pulling out words from, and this is not like a scientific wordle, I just started pulling out words that from what mathematicians said about their own work, and these were the kinds of words that I heard from mathematicians. Altogether more appealing, right? So the question that has occupied my mind for the last 6 years or so is this one, is if the current state of affairs has produced a lot of people who feel the thing on the left, how do we move math class toward the thing on the right? And that's not a simple proposition. It takes a lot of intellectual work and emotional work and time and support and thought. Thank you. So, but that's my overriding goal. Like that's how I think about things is moving closer to math class. The good news to me is the closer the closer we make math class to mathematics, the more people will like it because the thing on the right is appealing, right? So if we think math is scary and boring and all those things, then we have to kind of sugarcoat it and come up with reward systems. And my daughter's teacher is spending a lot of time teaching them like dances and tricks and memory aids and being silly and having them rap stuff, like trying to make it palatable through force of his personality. Which I really appreciate because he wants kids to like math class. But if he could make math class more like mathematics, he wouldn't have to do that because it on its own is a pretty joyful experience. So what that means for us is that most of us don't really know what mathematics is like. If we didn't get to experience it the way it is on the right, we need to re-educate ourselves now about what math is like so that we can have our kids have a more authentic, genuine, honest experience. So that means there's a little bit of education that we're going to do early tonight about what is this discipline of math that's going to frame our thinking. And then we're going to do some math together to see how we feel about it. And I promise it will be safe and a positive climate to do that. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to show a video of a mathematician in action, and it's about 5 minutes long. And her name is Vi Hart. She's a math magician or a math musician or something like that. And she makes videos of herself playing with math. And she's creative and she's funny and she talks very, very fast. So the idea here is not to try to understand every concept that she describes. It's to watch how she's thinking as she's playing. And while she talks, I'm going to write down the verbs that I hear, the actions that I hear her doing as she works. And feel free to play along at home in your notebook. And I'll miss things and I'll write really messy because she talks so fast. But just to get us a list of verbs, and then we're going to break into groups and we're going to look at some mathematicians' work to kind of identify some other verbs, and we'll start to talk about what those mean. I'm wondering if it's possible to kill the lights that are close to this, just so people can see a little bit better. Oh, Mr. Sketch, I'm going to be high as a kite by the end of this. Vi, V-I, and then her last name is Hart, H-A-R-T. Thank you, Heather.
There's all these fruit by the foot, or fruit by the feet, maybe fruits by the foot. Anyway, I figured they had mathematical potential, so I decided to just record myself playing with them. The first thing that comes to mind when it's the paper, even if it's covered in fruit flavors, make a Mobius strip. So I did. The thing about Mobius strips is they have one side, while fruits by the foot are by nature two-sided. A normal loop would have a paper side and a sugar side. Putting a half twist in would make a sudden transition from one to the other. But you can also do this. Wrap it around twice so the sugary part sticks to itself and the entire outside is covered in paper. Here's our Mobius strip. After confirming that Sharpie flip chart markers won't bleed through the paper, I drew a line along the single side of the Mobius strip, but that's not telling us anything that we didn't already know. Just like one line can cover both sides, except really one side, the paper does too. So unlike a normal loop of fruit by the foot covered in paper, which would need two pieces, one for each side, the Mobius strip can be unwrapped by pulling off a single strip of paper. I went and washed the Sharpie off my hands and then came back to see what else I could do. The strip of fruit-flavored gunk has these two lines going down it, perforations dividing it into thirds. One of the go-to Mobius strip fun things is to cut it in half down the middle, but after that, cutting it into thirds is the next thing to do. And it's as if fruit by the foot is designed for this purpose. So I started separating it along this line. You might want to pause here and think about what you think would happen. So I continue around, and when I loop around once, now I'm on the other side, and it turns out to not have been two lines, but one line that goes around twice. Let's see what we've got. It's completely whoa. I mean, this is totally magical to me that there's these two loops and they're linked together and they're not even the same size and they're like made of flavored sugar gum. But let's understand what's going on. You can do it with paper too. I cut out a strip, twist, and tape. Now I'm coloring the edge of both to demonstrate that the Mobius strip only has one edge, and so that we can keep track of it. Because when we cut a strip into thirds, you could also think of it like this. You're cutting the edge off. This leaves a thinner Mobius strip and a long looping edge. Because of the twist, the edge loops around the body of the Mobius strip, so the two are linked. Really though, you should just try it yourself. After making a Mobius strip and ripping it into thirds, I poked at the leftover bit of fruit by the foot, waiting to be inspired. I don't know, it's spirally? I opened up another package so I'd have more to play with. Bam! Whoa! It's got this pattern on it. I mean, I don't remember this at all about fruit by the foot, but then again, it's not like I've had one in the past like 15 years. And last time I had a fruit by the foot, I wouldn't have recognized this is a freeze pattern. A symmetric pattern that repeats in one dimension. I mean, repeating patterns are good because they have a rolling stamp that just kind of presses this pattern into it. But it's got other symmetry too. The two halves of this pattern are exactly the same, but not the same as in mirror symmetry going the long way. But it does have mirror symmetry going the short way, plus this point of 180-degree rotational symmetry, which basically means if you turn the strip of fruit roll up around, the pattern is the same. But it's neat that it does this in two tessellating halves, so you can flip around and fold it in half and everything. Okay, so I opened the last of my fruits by the foot, hoping for another freeze pattern, but it's the same as the last one, so I make a normal non-Mobius loop, and then I make a couple more and decide to put them together in a Baromean configuration. The Baromean rings are this arrangement of 3 loops that you see sometimes, and they're linked in such a way that no 3 loops are actually linked with each other. I mean, if you look at just 2 of the 3, they're not linked. If you undid any one loop, the other 2 would also be separated. Yet the 3 together are stuck. I tightened the loops up because they form this nice wrappy cube, and then I decided to try taking off the paper, but it was tricky because everything's sticky and linky, so it didn't turn out so well. So since I'm labeling things, I labeled the Mobius strip part, and that reminds me that the freeze patterns and Mobius strips are related. At least this particular freeze pattern has, as a result of its other symmetries, glide reflection symmetry. And glide reflection symmetry means that a pattern can be Mobius stripped. See, when I loop it around into a Mobius strip, the pattern exactly matches up, even though it's upside down. Oh, glide reflections. The glide is the loop part, and the reflect is the flip part. And what that means is that, with just one half of this nice tessellating pattern, we can loop it with a twist, and it matches up perfectly with itself to make a complete strip. At least, theoretically. In practice, it's a rather sticky process.
Okay, I know
And I'm wondering, can I stick on walls over here? Is that okay? Okay, so let's take a look at these verbs of what it looks like when a mathematician's in action. This is just one type of mathematician doing one type of thing. Would you mind sticking in between the windows? I think I can do this one here. And what stands out to you about this kind of math, of seeing somebody do math like this? What do you think about these verbs? Maybe tell the people at your table group, what is striking you about the kind of actions you saw her doing and the descriptions of this? This chair is so in my way. I'm Tracy. Nice to meet you all. Thanks for coming.
She was following That's amazing. It was logical, but it wasn't. As you said, it wasn't.
where you introduce.
Well, she looked up. I might learn one Did
she connected a lot of different concepts. I mean, it seemed like she was in the first person to say, they're all
Yeah.
One thing that just came up at this table, they were talking about that these aren't words that we typically associate with math class, right? Some of these people assume are in literacy only, poetry, reading, and some, you were saying some are everyday things, everyday language, right, that she was engaged in. So this is our first one. What I want to do is give you a little bit of time. I brought some resources that we'll play with so that we can have a more robust collection, not just from one sample, but from a few. So I brought 5 or 6 different things. So, and I'll show you what they are up here. So I brought 4 picture books, and there are stacks of them over here. I have multiple copies, so there are plenty of copies. I've looked a lot at how mathematicians are represented in society for kids. And it's usually not in very helpful ways. It's usually like the quirky, weird genius standing in front of the chalkboard full of figures, right, with the hair. And and so we're telling kids, you know, and they're white dudes. I mean, like 99.999% of the time. And so we keep sending this message to kids that this is what a mathematician looks like. And that's not a fantastic representation. So I'm always looking for resources to share with kids that show something different. So this actually is a white guy with crazy hair, but this book is so worth it. This is On a Beam of Light about Einstein. And what I love about it, aside from the illustrations, is it really gets at this idea of the verbs that Einstein was engaged in. For example, like here he is daydreaming and wondering and thinking. And my favorite picture is this, when he engages in a thought experiment where he's riding home on his bicycle and he wonders, he's like, it's one of those days where the light is coming through the clouds in these rays, and he wonders what would happen if he rode his bicycle on a beam of light. And that thought experiment, daydream, was the origin of the theory of relativity, right? So, so this is a lovely book. The Boy Who Loved Math is about Paul Erdős, another dead white guy, sorry. It's really hard to avoid them. And kids love, I mean, there are some great dead white guys, but I like to have a more diverse representation. Kids love this book because it's got like a graphic style to it. And he was very, I don't want to spoil it, but he's a really interesting character. And there's a surprise in this for if people have their assumptions about how they think mathematicians work and live, he's kind of an interesting counterexample. This is a book about Fibonacci. If you've ever noticed spirals in nature, that was Fibonacci's jam. And let me see if I can find a good picture of that. So this is the kind of an account of how he's walking around on the beach and he's finding spirals in shells and looking for patterns in numbers and shapes. And then this one breaks the mold. This is my favorite book that's come out in a long time. It's called Infinity and Me. It's about a little girl, not a famous mathematician, but just a little girl who has a question about infinity. She's struggling with it. She feels unsettled by the idea of infinity, which she should, right? It's kind of an unsettling idea when you start thinking about the infinite. So she goes through her day asking everybody she knows, how do you picture infinity? How do you think about infinity? So there are lots of different representations of infinity in the book. Like this is her grandmother thinks in terms of ancestors and descendants. And so it's just a really creative and wonderful, beautiful book. So there are 4 picture books. On this purple piece of paper, these are direct quotes from mathematicians talking about how they do their work. And then if you have a device that's online, and I think can everyone use the guest pass? So if you click, and I'll come back to this in a second, it's so mad at me. That tiny URL, it should bring you to a page that looks like, you can't see my screen, can you? Let's fix that. Okay. So it should bring you to a page that looks like this. This is one tab. It's just a a way to share a bunch of links all at one time. So these are some online things. Part of the issue with the dead white guys is that in the books it's going to be more dead white guys, but by going to the internet we can bring math up to the present day, make it clear to students that math is still going on. It's not something that's finished, and it's done by people all around the world. So these are some resources on that. This last one in particular, I just want to show. This is a classroom teacher started this project called the Mathematicians Project because one of her students said, he said, how come none of the mathematicians in the book look like me? And he was Mexican, and he said Mexicans must not be mathematicians. And she said, of course they are. And he said, okay, name one. And she said, I'll get back to you, because she didn't know either, right? She didn't have that history. So she has made it her mission to gather this resource that shows mathematicians all around the world of all genders, including transgender, so that kids can find mathematicians who look like them, which is really interesting. So that kind of gets special mention. So there's some videos here. There's some blog posts. Yeah, I'm going to put it back up. So where were we? This one. So that little tiny URL, it's just AB families. That's for Acton Boxborough families. So that will take you to those links. So here's what I want to do. I want you to take about 10 minutes to pick something that appealed to you, a picture book, the quotes from mathematicians, something online, and jot down the verbs. Try to do kind of what I was doing up here, jot down the verbs that you see mathematicians engaging in. And then we'll get those up on the wall as well. And then we'll do some math, and we'll see if we do any of these, because I'm kind of curious if we can engage in these verbs. Let's get some of these ideas down on the chart paper so that we can have them up on the wall. What I'd like to do is talk to someone different who, if you haven't had a chance to talk it through, it could be the person at your table, but if you read it together, you guys should split up and go talk to somebody different. I left a poster at every table. It doesn't matter if you write on the one at your table or if you get up and you walk around, and just find a poster, get your verbs on it, and do some talking with somebody else about it. So, because not everyone got to read everything, right? So you could say, here's what I read, and here's some of the things I noticed, and they can record for you, and then you switch. Doesn't need to be a formal thing. But let's just get some of these verbs down on the posters and get them up on the wall so that we can have them to access. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. That sounds overcomplicated up here. It doesn't need to be so complicated.
It's my favorite turtle.
He's 3 right now. Oh, really?
So we're getting a much richer idea of what math is for the students. And I love this, and it's beautiful. But we can't do this and then the next day give them a packet and have them believe us, right? Like, kids are too smart for that. And they're going to judge what math is based on their lived experience in math class for 180 days a school year. So these words, if we're going to be credible, if we're going to say math involves these wonderful things that we just wrote up on the wall, then kids have to live that in math class at least some of the time. And that's what I want to shift us to, is to engage in a math problem, the kind of math problem that I would teach in elementary school, where I'm going to try to infuse some of these verbs more into the experience, okay? So we're going to do a little bit of math together. Before we do, I just want to talk about norms around doing math together, because some of you are more comfortable doing math often because you're math teachers, and some of you maybe haven't done math together with people in a long time. So my question really, and I need one of these markers back, is what do you want to agree to? What norms do we want to set so that everyone here feels safe sharing their mathematical ideas? So what would make it so that you would feel comfortable talking about your mathematical ideas in this group?
It's okay to make mistakes.
Okay. Does that sound good to people? Time to think. And can I add on to that? That's not just for like me and facilitating, right? So if you're at your table and you have an idea and you really want to share it, but you see someone else is still in the middle of their thinking, you kind of have to bite your tongue until they're ready to talk. And so I think of this as like, allow everyone their moment of joy, right? You don't want to rob it from someone. If they're figuring it out and you just blurt out the answer that you found, and we talk about this with kids all the time, it short circuits the thinking, and it's like, oh, I guess it's 26 or whatever, you know. I mean, and there's this like fizzle where the kid was really engaged and grappling with something interesting, and then that goes away. So we want to make sure that the time to think and the wait time is something we do for one another, so that we all can have that delightful moment, and we get to witness it in each other, which is part of the idea of doing math socially with other people. Anything else? Yeah.
Be open-minded. Take risks.
Listen to each other.
Anything else? Is there anything that has shut you down in the past that you want to make sure people know not to do? Yeah.
Don't say it's so easy.
Beautiful. That's in chapter 2 of my book. Or it's obvious, or clearly, or you just, or right. All those, that whole language is very important. I appreciate you saying that. It's only easy if you know how to do it, right? Or if you figure something out, it seems harder first, then you figure it out and you say, oh, now I see, and it feels easier than it did a minute ago, but that's not the same thing as being easy, because easy is personal to all of us. And I think any kind of like boasty or show-offy kind of tone, that really shuts people down. So let's not do that. The purpose of tonight is not to get the answer as fast as we can. The purpose of tonight is to enjoy doing some problem solving together and get to know what it feels like to engage in real math in a way that we hope for our students as well. Okay? Okay, so what I'm going to do, and we can add to this if there's something else you think of, I'm going to show you a 1-minute video. And I'm going to ask you what you notice and what you wonder about this video. It's really quiet. Oh, I turned it down. That's fine. So, what did you notice and what do you wonder about what you just saw? And yeah, we could do it in a large group, or do you want to have a chance to talk in the small group first, or we can go straight to the large group? Okay. What are you thinking?
It looks warm outside. She looked like she had a good energy and was having fun.
What did you observe that makes you say that?
Just her demeanor, her bounciness. Yeah. It was a playful way about it.
Okay. Yeah.
I noticed that she was the heavy side of the seesaw.
Is that a notice or a wonder? What do you think? A wonder? So maybe I have to make that bigger. Does she want to? Or I wonder if she, how do you want to say it? I wonder if she wants to. Okay, so we had, how does the milk crate stay put? Something like that. And then tell me yours again.
I noticed I don't think a crate full of bricks will offset her weight.
That's
I noticed, but on the wonder, I wonder what she's going to do about that.
what did you notice that makes you sure that it won't offset her weight?
I'm not sure, but I just know how much bricks weigh and the size of the crate. It didn't seem like it was going to offset her weight.
So can we put it on the wonder side that if a full crate doesn't match her weight, how did you say it? Doesn't
Offset her weight?
doesn't offset her weight. What
What will she do about it?
will she do about it?
I wonder how many bricks.
Can you say that a little louder?
I wonder how many bricks will it take
To do what?
to allow her to play on the seesaw.
Play on the seesaw. Oh, wrong one.
I guess I was wondering, is she going to figure out that she could add more than one brick at a time? You know how she put one, then she went and got one more, and you just kind of say,
Let's bring 5. Get it over with.
Can I sneak and give you an answer to that because I love it so much? She is the daughter of someone who makes curriculum, and this was her idea. She said, I got an idea at the playground about a lesson, a math task, and so she decided to add the one brick at a time because she thought that would be better for teachers in implementing this lesson. That was her idea, which is pretty amazing. This is Graham Fletcher, is the creator, of this, and this is his 7-year-old Audrey. Yep.
Oh, she's only 7? Oh,
Oh,
I didn't notice. I thought I was an adult.
why is that striking? That
Then maybe
she's
she will have enough bricks to offset her weight.
okay. So can I pretend you asked? How old is she? And I'll tell you that one that she was 7 at the time. So then you're thinking maybe now there are enough bricks in the crate. Anything else you noticed from the video in the first place? It doesn't have to be mathy. If there are other things you noticed, like there's a cow in the background. If you noticed the cow,
I noticed there were no other children at the
no other children at the playground.
so I wonder if another kid's gonna come and make the bricks.
Do you think that's why she's using the bricks?
I hadn't thought that until Heather made her wonderful observation.
That it's in lieu of playing with another kid? She can figure out a way to seesaw by
Bricks
herself?
are not great friends. I can't.
They'll never argue it.
Yeah, that's true. They don't bully either.
It looks like a much safer seesaw than the one that she
How about the brick, like right up so that we all can see that it's solid? It looks solid to me, so I noticed that she made a point of that.
Okay, so there are many interesting questions here, and we'll probably answer all of them. Remind me to come back, and we'll see if we've answered all of them. We're gonna take on this one. Don't do that on me. It won't let me highlight it. The how many bricks will it take to allow her to play on the seesaw? We're gonna explore that question today and see where it goes. So before we get to a place where we can answer that question, let's think about that question. And can you tell me what would you need in order to answer that question? What kind of information do you want from me or the world? Yeah.
Her weight and the weight of the brick.
The weight of the girl and the weight of the brick. Do we need anything else?
do they have to be equal in order for her to play on the seesaw?
Yeah, good question,
I
right?
think we've all done this before.
In the weight of the crate.
That was-
People who don't weigh the same have legs, though.
Yeah.
Silly thing to say, but like,
Balance or
like
trying
a.
to just have movement?
Oh, so if they're not the same, and the brick goes down, if the brick's slightly heavier, if you're doing seesaw with someone who's slightly heavier than you and they go down and you're stuck up here, they have to push, right? So I'm wondering, I have that question about, is she just trying to balance, but if she's trying to play, how close to the weight does she need to get? Or does it need to be less than her so she can always get back down, or?
What were the questions someone asked about? What did people say they needed?
What, the weight of the girl and the weight of the brick?
And the weight of the crate.
And the weight of the crate.
Do you need both of those, or if you know one, like you know the weight of the girl and you know how many bricks, it's balance.
So that's a third thing, the number of bricks. Okay, so before I forget these, let me just jot them down. I heard we've identified it'd be useful to know the weight of the girl, brick, right? The weight of the brick, the weight of the crate, perhaps. And then you just talked about the number of bricks.
What was the question we were trying to answer?
I think we were after how many bricks, but I think you're also saying we could do it the other way. That if we knew the weight of the girl and the weight of one brick, we could say how many bricks. If we knew how many bricks and the weight of the girl, we could say how much a brick weighs.
Right, that's right.
If we knew how many bricks and the weight of a brick, we could say what balanced the girl. So there are three different things here, right? And I think you probably want two of them. That's my guess. Anything else that you want to know? Okay, I'm going to tell you these things, but I'm going to wait. I'm not going to tell you yet because I'm super mean. And what I'm going to ask you to do first is to estimate. So what's your ballpark of how many bricks it's going to take for the girl to be able to play? And here's the thing. I'm not going to ask you to give me your best guess yet. I'm going to ask you to give me an estimate you know is wrong. This is a really empowering thing for kids, by the way. If you ask for the wrong answer first, the student who is reluctant to talk because they're afraid to not be right is like, oh, I can do that. So what I'd like you to do is think about a number that's too low and think about a number that's too high. Like you think it's between what and what? What's an example? Like what's a too low number that somebody has? You know it's at least how many bricks? 3. 3 is too low. So and you know this because 2 was. Okay. So then my question is, could you give me a slightly braver too low, where you know it's still too low, but it's closer? Interesting. Okay, so I want you to and then think about your too high. Like I'm asking you to come up with a range. It's going to be between what and what. And then I'm going to ask you to write that down. Here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to ask each of you to draw. Go ahead and talk. So can I just mirror back to you? The last 3 or 4 minutes of talk was so beautiful to me, of the reasoning that you were doing together, all of you. So there's all this, I have an assumption, I think kids weigh about this much based on my experience of teaching or being a parent, or I think bricks. And then I saw a lot of people doing, well, she did this, right? And how big is she? And can this table is having a conversation, can we picture a child picking up a 4-pound bag of sugar or a big can of tomatoes? Or they started thinking about that, about her strength. And then this group revised their thinking several times about the weight of the brick. And then I heard let's go back to our original. I talked myself out of what I first thought, but now I'm talking myself back into it, right? So there was a lot of, I would say, revision exploratory talk, where we could call it rough draft talk. My friend Mandy Johnston calls it that, where it's going to be revised. You're not worried about being right. You're reasoning it out loud as a way to make sense. It's not talk for the sake of talk. It's talk because it helped you think. This is all part of what's called mathematical modeling. It's a really important thing that we teach of how do we take a situation and then try to come up with an estimate or a model around it. And to do that, we have to question our assumptions. We have to identify what the variables are that matter. And we normally don't do this with kids enough. What we do is we give them one of those textbook problems that's like, a child plays on a seesaw, blah, blah, blah. The brick weighs this, the crate weighs this. Use the formula you saw on page 52 to solve the... And so what we're trying to do here, what I'm trying to do here is to have you be part of the whole thought process that gets you to this question, which is ultimately a multiplication division question, but we're building something a little bit bigger. And so the reasoning that you're doing and the revision that you're doing just was lovely. So now that you mostly had closed in on your estimates, what I want you to do is I'm going to add a mathematical representation here, which is called an open number line. An open number line is just a number line that doesn't have the intervals and hash marks on it, okay? And what I'd like you to do is, whatever your numbers were, place them on your number line and just label them as your TL is your too low, and your TH is your too high, and your JR is your just right, okay? And just go ahead and drop them in there wherever you think they go. And you have to promise not to erase. I'm going to give you a chance to revise your estimates as we go, but just sketch them now. Let's say their too low was 5, and their too high they put way out here, and let's make that like 30. And then they think that 10 is just right. Like 100% of kids put it smack in the middle. This is normal human behavior. We're like, this is too low, this is too high, so right in the middle must be my just right. And so they'll put it here and they'll say just right. And this is now a great opportunity for a math teacher, because when we provide the number lines for kids, we don't know that they're not thinking about proportion with number lines. So by having them make the number line, then we can talk about it of like, well, where does 10 go between 5 and 30, and what really would be halfway in the middle? And so if you feel like, oh, I put my just right in the middle, but it doesn't actually go there, then just adjust it, and you can do like a revised just right and put it wherever it goes. Okay, so just add it to your number line. You don't need to cross anything out. It's totally normal to do that, and it's a great opportunity. So I'm going to give you that information, but not yet. I'm going to just give you one of them. And here's my question. This is the next thing I want you to argue about, is if you could only have one, which one matters more to you? The weight of the brick or the weight of the girl?
Yeah.
Why brick?
I feel less confident about the brick. I have children. So I've seen a 7-year-old before.
What's your range for brick weights? What have you played around with?
Between 3 and 5.
Between 3 and 5.
Yes.
So that's only a 2-pound difference. Why would that matter so much?
Changes the number.
Like a 50 to 70% variance.
50 to 70% variance. Can you explain more what you think about that? The percentage. If
a 7-year-old girl we think might weigh 50 pounds, if they're heavy and it's 60, that's only 20%. 10 out of 50 is only 20% variance. But if it's a 3-pound brick versus a 5-pound brick, that's 2 out of 3 or 2 out of 5. So as a percentage of the average, it's a lot more. 2 pounds out of 4 pounds plus or minus 1 is more than 50 pounds plus or minus 5 or 10.
Do people have questions about that? Let's try to dig into that a little bit. Did that make sense? If it didn't make sense, ask a clarifying question. You might say, can somebody else say that? Or ask someone to restate it. Or maybe I can ask, can somebody else try to explain this argument about, I think you're talking about error, percentage of error is different with the weight of the brick and the weight of the girl. And so does someone else want to take a crack at trying to explain that? Just so we can hear it a second way.
the brick is one of your factors.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a factor of 3, and you're multiplying it by 15, or figuring out how many of them are in 50, or a factor of 5, that's a bigger variance than a 50-pound child or a 60-pound child.
So if you
A
were,
lot more.
let's stick with those numbers for a minute. You went between 3 and 5, and you said, let's say there are 15 bricks. So is that what you just said?
I said if she weighed 50 pounds,
50 pounds.
how many 3s are there in 50 pounds? How many 5s are there? There are only 10
Ah.
5s.
Okay.
Well, can it be even more simplified than that, in that there's only one girl, and you have to figure out the number of bricks, and therefore it's additive in the number of bricks?
Right, which is
that
why
you-
you multiplication.
Right, so in
Big,
order,
bigger.
that's why you have to know, that's why the weight of the bricks becomes so important, is that you have multiple bricks that you have to figure out how much would add up to one girl. So the error on one girl, one thing, one person, however you want to define it, would be much less than multiple things.
So if you were 10, you said if you were 10 pounds off on the girl, that could be an error. But if you're 2 pounds off on the brick and there are 20 bricks, that's a 40-pound error. Is that? So it gets multiplied. The error gets multiplied, literally gets multiplied by the number of bricks. And so you're off by way more. It's interesting because at first you wouldn't think it makes a difference. Like, well, I'm going to be wrong on one, you know. But are we convinced by this? Do we want the weight of the brick? Okay, so I'll give you the weight of the brick first. And then if you want to change your estimate at that point, then you are welcome to. So if you want to add a revised estimate, just add it right to your number line. If this is like, oh, that's a bigger brick than I thought. Yeah. You want to see that first video again?
Now we're all looking to see how much she weighs.
Isn't that horrible? She'd be wearing a little bit more tight clothing. All right, that's good.
She's pretty average. She does.
Did your estimate just get narrower? The difference between your too low and your too high?
Straighter to the side.
Okay, I really thought it was like that.
Can we put that in our mathematical equation? She's very strong. She
Absolutely.
does work out.
She just
Maybe freakishly strong.
5 pounds.
That's very funny.
Okay. So I could give this to you. Let's do it this way. Let's watch what happens with her, and then you'll be able to figure out how much she weighs. Do we want to do it that way? Sure. Okay. And those of you who are curious about the milk crate, if you look carefully, you'll see when it gets zip tied. There's a little skip in the video. So right there. Did you see it? Yeah. It gets zip tied to the seesaw so it doesn't fall off. So we answered one of our questions. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking it might be a horse.
Thought it was a car.
Are we getting closer to where you think it would be?
Too much was 11.
So how much do you think she weighs? 60 pounds, and I can in fact show you that. On the nose. 60 pounds on the nose. So what does that mean about the weight of the crate? It's negligible. I wonder about the perfection of the seesaw here. I mean, it's not at a balanced position when we walk up to it, right? So like how precise is a seesaw? How close would she have to get?
Yeah, difference in the lever length there.
Where are we on time? We're gonna skip this, but you can put the actual one on your number line if you want. And these are the kinds of questions I would ask kids is to think about, like, how are you wiser now? Like if we did a similar problem, what kinds of questions would you ask earlier? And what new questions can you ask is one of my favorite ways to measure learning. That comes from my friend Christopher Danielson, that he says if you've learned something, at the end of that learning, you can ask a question you couldn't have asked at the beginning, like generate a new question. So that's really fun.
Is that one on his website?
Yeah, he wrote a blog about that a long time ago. Here's what I want to do. I want to show you, just to quickly give you a sense of what does this look like when kids do it. So these are first graders. This problem I actually think you could use in every grade level and do something different with. So she counted by fives. There were 12 bricks. There was 12 bricks. Was 12 bricks. This one's really interesting. So you see that she counts by twos at the bottom to get to 60 pounds. They did it the other way of once they knew the weight of the girl and the weight of the brick, they were trying to figure out how heavy she was, I think. Or no, they were trying to figure out the number of bricks. And this on the top, we have 5 plus 1 equals 6 plus a brick, or I don't know quite how she's thinking about that, like double bricks or something. The girl equals 60, we see that. The girl is 60. She counted by tens. She shows the really happy kid at the end, like pumping her arms. This is fives and fives more. I have spent a lot of time looking at this piece of work. Yeah, fives and fives more, fives and fives more. And fives and fives more really was very central to the thinking of this student, because every time they added a pair of bricks, they wrote 5 plus 5 equals 10 again. And so, like, I love this. If you actually look, you see, so we have 5 and 5 is 10, and 5 and 5 is 10, and that together makes 20. And then 5 and 5 is 10, and 5 and 5 is 10, and those together, or maybe we'd come down here. Now we're up to 30, and then we add another, and now we're up to 40, 50, 60. So that they were incrementally adding on, okay? So one of the things that we want in math class is for kids to be making sense themselves through talk and through writing and representations. So these drawings and their work reveals a lot about what they're thinking, and teachers need to be able to see things like this to make good decisions about where to go. So I hope to see lots of blank paper and big whiteboards in math classes where the kids can do the writing and the recording to make sense. I want to jump back into where we were. Can we take a minute to think about what verbs we engaged in when we did the seesaw problem? Let's grab markers. We don't have tons, but share markers and get up for a second and circle ones that you saw that are on our posters that we actually did. And we didn't do them all, but let's get just some circled, and stretch your legs for a sec.
We wondered.
We're just about out of time. I want to bring it to the classroom that these are the sorts of things I'm trying to help math teachers do more of, and the learning specialists here are trying to help teachers do more of, and the teachers here are trying to help kids do more of. We want math classes where kids are talking and arguing and discussing about discussing their ideas. We want math classes where kids are listening to one another. Don't you love that head cock? I love it so much. He's listening to her so carefully. Kids should be writing in math and processing their thoughts that way. They should be working together and sharing their ideas, and also working alone. It's not everything's done in a group. Kids need a chance to grapple with stuff on their own. This is my favorite pair of pictures ever. You see, she realizes her mistake. on the left, and then immediately lunges forward, doesn't even go to get an eraser, just starts erasing with her sleeve. And then I actually have the picture right there. A few minutes later, she figured it out. Okay, so I want that for all kids. This boy was so deep in his own question that he had asked that like the whole world disappeared around him. He was really lost in thought, a really mathematical thought. This is not off task, and this is not daydreaming in the negative way. This is what we want to be happening. And kids are engaged in these delightful moments of discovery together, and so we want that in math class. So these are ways to reach me. That's the book, which is really for teachers. It's not expected that parents would get this book, but just so that you understand what it was. The website on the bottom, the tjzager.com, it has a blog, and it has information about the book, and it has ways to contact me. But you can always email me or find me on Twitter, and I'm happy to talk anytime. And are there any questions? I know we're just about out, but are there any questions that people are wondering about what we did? Yeah.
We're doing your book in a professional learning community at our school. We're loving it.
Yay.
And we feel like we're preaching to the choir a lot. But the curriculum drives how much time we spend on the joy of math. Any suggestions how we can approach admin and just come up with that?
If we look at what we have for our book,
Yeah.
Teach Math, and it's not this, it's not what we want to do.
Yeah.
But we just bought the book.
Oh no.
We just bought it, and we already hate it. And
Can I ask which one it is?
Envision.
Oh, I hate it too. I'm sorry. That's what my kids are enduring in school. It's
awful.
It's awful.
And
I'm not.
more discovery.
You can put that on the internet.
Yeah.
It's fine with me.
Discovery.
Yeah.
Feel like I have to teach these lessons, and I have to get them in, and I don't have a minute to breathe.
Are they being told they have to teach it with strict fidelity? No.
Not anymore.
Okay.
First year when we were considering adoption, yes.
Um,
Now,
But some of them are so they don't know it yet, and they're so afraid of missing important parts of the curriculum.
Yeah.
And having the kids get behind, and it's so hard.
Anyone who needs to go, you should not feel like you need to stay. But I want to. Holy cow! What's the name of that place? Hawker Brownlow. I want to show you something that I did with a. That would be here, with an Envision problem. Okay, so look at that. I use the same girl because I love that picture so much. It's like my happiest picture. So no, I need mittens. Mittens, here we go. Okay, so this is in the book, and you'll get to it when you get to it. It's in chapter 6. So this is a typical Envision problem. So just read that for a second. They're obsessed with tables. Okay, so here I have a lot of problems with this. The problem with Envision is it's not written from a place of respect for teacher or student. Each child has 2 hands. Like, do we actually have to tell kids that? Like, what do they think kids think, right? So everything's very prescriptive. There's a huge text load. This was a first grade problem. So to have that much text at the beginning of a problem.
This much space to write.
Exactly. Well, you don't get to write. You just get to trace over the dot font at the bottom, right? Because it's already written for you. So here's what I noticed about Envision is that the first problem is always like this. It's highly scaffolded. It's built on a gradual release of responsibility model. So what that means is when you get to number 12 in the little like inside it, outside, inside it, that thing, the Envision foldable thing, the last problem is just a problem. And I would often just start there because all this scaffolding paradoxically shuts kids down. They're doing it to try to help kids, but it's like, what the heck is going on in this problem? What is this problem even asking? And from a teaching point of view, when I look at this, okay, the problem is really, there are these 4 terribly drawn, like offensively line art attempts at multi-ethnic students. It's ridiculous, but so if you like, it's really, there are 4 kids, they want to play in the snow, how many mittens do they need? That's the question here. but they have all this directive. You need to find out this, make a table, write the numbers, count by ones, count by twos, right? And then they say make a table. Okay, if I back up and I think 4 kids are playing in the snow, how many mittens do they need? That is a multiplication question. That is not one that screams out for a table to me. Like how many students are in an elementary school around here? 350. If there are 350 kids going to recess and you want to know how many mittens they need for some reason, are you going to be like, okay, 1, 2, 3, like all the way to 350 and then 2 for all the way to 700? Like you're not going to solve it that way. Like that makes no sense, right? So it's, if I want to teach the strategy of make a table, I would use a different problem. I would use I have 4 shirts and 6 pairs of pants. How many outfits can I make? Or something like that. Where you have a lot of data and you need a way to organize it. And so a table is a beautiful strategy for that. So the table thing throws me. Look for a pattern also throws me. I think once you have the table, you can find a pattern, but you don't solve the problem by finding a pattern. So it's strange. So this came home with my daughter when she was in 1st grade, and the teacher is a friend of mine, and it was in their strict fidelity year, and she said, oh my God, every kid in the class could tell me it was 8, but they were like crying. They were like, what am I supposed to write where? I don't understand this. I hate math, right? So I felt like you don't need to do all this. You could just ask the kids how many, 4 kids want to play in the snow, how many mittens they need. So I went outside with my daughter, my younger daughter, who was 4 at the time. We went to the dog park. And I asked her this. I said, 4 kids want to play in the snow, how many mittens do they need? And she sat down on a log, and I took pictures from over her head. And that's the first thing she did. She said, 1 kid with 2 fingers, which is like awesome, right? That's a multiplicative thinking. She knows that it's a number per kid, like 2 mittens per kid, which is how multiplication works. There's a rate there. So this is how she did it. She went 1 kid, 2 kid, 3 kid, 4 kid, and then she went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They need 8 mittens. So I thought, okay, she didn't need me to create a drawing for her. She didn't need me to tell her how many hands they had. She didn't need me to make the table, right? So, and then I asked my daughter Maya, who was the right grade level for this. I said, how would you do this? And she said, well, mittens come in pairs. So for every kid, there are 2 mittens. So for 4 kids, there will be 8 mittens. You can just double, right? Great. And that thinking had been scaffolded right out of that in the worksheet. So I thought you could just do this. You could just, that's what I would do. If I were teaching Envision, I would look at this. It's like a 5-minute makeover. What's the math here? I'm going to throw everything else out. I'm going to keep their problem if it's a decent problem. I'm going to put the problem at the top of a big blank piece of paper, and I'm going to give it to kids and see what they do. And I'll show you the difference, because I did this. I went to New Hampshire where I work, and I asked a teacher friend of mine, I said, can you do this? And so I'm going to just show you some of the kind of work, and this is all in the book. If you have the book, you'll see it. The kind of work that we got. So some kids were they were direct modeling the problem. They drew the 4 kids. Oh, let me make something clear. We gave the kids choice. So we had 3 options, 4 kids, 9 kids, or 13 kids. And we chose those numbers carefully. For kids who knew their single-digit facts, we wanted to have a problem where we could see their addition. So you'll see sometimes it's 4 kids, sometimes it's 9 kids, or sometimes it's 13. So some kids drew it in this kind of they drew their own drawing, right? They didn't need someone to draw a drawing for them. They're adorable, smiley little kids with their mittens. The one on the bottom, this was a 1st and 2nd grade multi-age, and that student had qualified for special education in math. He chose the hardest problem when we gave him some choice. He drew a schematic of 13 kids. That's really great, right? He didn't spend a lot of time decorating. And he counted the heads, and so there are 13 kids, and then he counted the arms by 2s. It went 2, 4, 6, 8, and he got to 26. Awesome. So when you open up the problem, you also can see what kids can really do, and it might surprise you. If you have expectations for kids, they might get surprised, which is one of my favorite things to have happen. This student drew 13 circles, counted them by 1s, and then went back to the beginning and counted them by 2s. So it's the beginning of multiplicative thinking. Other students were ready to not use a model, but to start using counting strategies, so they skip counted by 2s. This kid, I'm going to show you 3 pieces of work, all from the same kid. She did 4 kids want to play in the snow, and she drew a concrete model, and then she had time. She said, can I do the next one? So she took the 9, and she drew her mittens again, but look, now we have an equation. And then she still had time, so she did the 13, and now this time she skipped counting by 2s. So even within the space of one lesson, 20 minutes or so, we're seeing huge growth in what she is able to do, which we never would have gotten with that worksheet, ever, right? That worksheet's just about filling in that box and moving on. And then, holy cow, one kid made a table. I was like, wow, look, somebody finds the table useful. And he was totally digging the patterns in the table. Like, I think what the writers of the they're not bad people. Some of them are even my friends, and I have yelled at them a lot. But they were thinking it might go to this place. And for one kid of 20, it did. And that's great. And he was able to explain why he used the table. And I thought to count by 2s because it'd be quicker, and each kid has 2 hands. And like, so this is what the full piece of paper looked like. We had the question at the top, a big blank space, and then a place to write. So if I had to teach Envision, like it's a perfectly fine pacing guide, all that's fine. I would do this kind of makeover really often. I would just say, okay, there are 12 problems here. I'm going to pick the 3 I like. I'm going to recreate them. I'm just going to write them on the whiteboard, or I'll put them at the top of a piece of paper and let kids have at it. And if your administration is okay with that, you can make so much more room for kids to make sense and have agency and own their thinking and feel positive about math, even while technically using the curriculum just with this accommodation. Does that,
Yeah.
that's where I would go.
We thought of doing that, and I work closely with kindergarten and first grade, you work with kindergarten.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really, it's a shame.
It is a shame. It's, I think it was not an aspirational program. I think they were, yeah, I wish they had thought better of us all, you know. They weren't trying to do bad things, but I have seen it really affect how teachers feel about their work.
I asked kids that question in the beginning, how do you feel about math?
Yeah.
From kindergarten to 8th grade.
Yeah.
And in kindergarten, it was full of wonder.
Yeah.
And then it went down. And by the time you got to 8th grade, it was all very dry, very boring, because that's how they experienced it.
Yeah, and that's on us, right?
I know.
That's when I look at math anxiety ratings from teachers, that's the most heartbreaking thing is when you ask, when did it start? And it's pretty evenly spread. Like there are a lot of people who started, they say in K2 when they got their first time fact tests. That was the thing, the single digit fact tests. That's just got to end. A lot of people say 3-5, either multiplication fact tests, long division, or the introduction of fractions. Middle school, what you hear a lot of is I was humiliated at the board. Gender stuff comes up a lot in middle school. It was often a male teacher and a female student feeling embarrassed or demeaned or told, you know, she didn't belong here. And I hope we're making some progress on that slowly. High school, lots of people said I was fine till algebra or I was fine till geometry, and then I hit my wall, which means the arithmetic that they had was procedural because arithmetic is the foundation of algebra. So the way we're trying to teach arithmetic now, the whole idea is that kids get to algebra and they don't hit a wall because we've been uncovering the properties of numbers and operations all the way through. It doesn't matter if it's with numbers or with variables, it's the same ideas. And then there actually are some people who do fine all the way through high school and then get to college and hit a wall and say that's when it got bad. But nothing in the data has ever suggested anyone before kindergarten had math anxiety. Like no one's born with math anxiety. It's something we do to people. It's a response to an environment. And so that's on teachers. We have to figure out a way to do this better so that we're not continuing to build this culture of anxious people. And I think it's totally within our reach, but it involves asking a lot of teachers who are teaching right now who have never experienced math taught this way are being asked to teach it in this way. And we tend to teach how we were taught. And so that's a hurdle to overcome. But I think that's overcomable, I sure hope. That's the main focus of my work, without a doubt, is to support teachers in that journey. And I know all teachers want to do that for their students. So,
In other countries like Singapore and Netherlands and all those, do is it more procedural, or is it the instruction, or is it more, because I grew up in Belgium and I do remember
Yeah.
procedure.
It really varies, and not only does it vary country to country, it varies within the country. So like in Japan, in the early grades, the math instruction is pretty amazing. And then they sort of lose their minds somewhere, and it becomes this like massive drill, like Kumon on steroids kind of thing, where everybody's competitive in getting their kids in lots of tutoring to pass the tests to go to college. But the primary schooling is really great. So it's like hard to even say country to country. And I think we sometimes want to compare to the other countries and figure out, but I don't know how helpful it is to compare. There are really good things to learn from other countries. Particularly in Japan, Phil Darrow talks about this a lot, that he's one of the writers of the Common Core, that in the US, the mindset has always been, what do I need to teach so that my kids get the right answer on this worksheet? And in Japan, the mindset has been, what math are my students supposed to learn while working on this problem? Which is a very different question. We're more focused on getting the answer of like, what matters is somehow this worksheet that needs to be complete and filled out and correct. And I think a lot about writing, the difference between writing instruction and math instruction. And in writing, when I was an elementary school teacher, and I got to teach all the subjects, which I miss now because I'm like so mathy, but I was always thinking to myself, it's not about this piece of writing, it's about the writer, the young writer in front of me. And how am I helping this writer develop? By talking about this one specific piece of writing. And that's just the same thing in math, is when you have a kid stumped on something in math, it's not so much about, we got to get it finished on this piece of paper, but like, okay, I have a young mathematician in front of me that I'm trying to nurture and develop and have them grow and feel confident. And so it's not about this like, let's get the right answer on this piece of math, but let me stay focused on the mathematician. And I think that Japanese model in the primary grades is pretty great at that. I went to Japan a long time ago with the group called the Japanese Association of Mathematical Students, or JAMS, which is really funny to me because it's like the freshest name for the dorkiest group I've ever been a part of in my life. But listening to the students, they had all had really good experiences, and then it was like, Juku was the tutorial program that they were traumatized by. So nobody's got this down. I don't think any country has got it down just yet, but we're working on it. Any other questions? I want to let you get home to your families, and it's late on a cold night.
I just had one thing
Yeah.
to say about the girl that did it 3 times with the 3 different numbers.
Yeah.
You notice that she started with the
easiest one.
The easiest one.
Yeah.
So a girl.
Yeah.
Trying to be, building her confidence. But she used a different model each time. So she just kind of said, oh, well, now let me do this one, but let me try to approach it a little bit in a little bit more sophisticated manner. And I think that time made her grow and see herself as a mathematician in the way that she's doing that as someone who's good at math. And just having the choice and having that time to be able to take the steps, I think, is really important.
For sure. And it was interesting because this was a boy, the table one, and he also started with the 4 kids. And he was a 2nd grader who really loved math, and we were surprised, but we felt like he went with the safest numbers to start to work out this theory of his about the pattern. And then he built on it throughout the course of the day. So yes, time. We don't give kids enough time to kind of dig into things.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was really fun to come.